The gym echoed with laughter as a group of popular students circled around the quiet black girl, their words sharp like knives. "What's the matter? Too quiet to talk? Too weak to stand up for yourself?" They mocked her, oblivious to the strength simmering beneath the surface. She had always kept to herself, the one who blended into the background, never seeking attention, never needing it. They thought she was an easy target. They thought she was weak, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. As the bullies pushed her, laughing louder with every jab, something inside her began to shift. Her chest tightened, her heart pounded. She didn't want to fight back. She wasn't the type to draw attention, to make a scene. But the words, the taunts, they stung deeper than they realized. It was lunch break, and the cafeteria had a front row seat to this drama unfolding. One of the bullies, always the loudest, the most obnoxious, shoved her, pushing her into a corner. "What's the matter? You scared? Bet you can't do anything about it," he sneered. The others laughed, egging him on. Their eyes glinted with the thrill of humiliating someone who couldn't fight back. But that's when it happened. Something flickered in her eyes, something they'd never seen before. She stood up straight, her body no longer shrinking into itself. She wasn't going to back down. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The bully stepped closer, his grin wide, confident. "What are you gonna do, huh?" he sneered, pushing her again. But as his hand moved toward her, she grabbed his wrist with a speed that left the whole cafeteria silent. The grip was firm, controlled. Her eyes locked onto his, cold and steady. There was no hesitation, no fear. The bully froze, caught completely off guard. His mouth went dry. The other students, once laughing, now stood in stunned silence. The girl, this quiet, reserved girl, had just shown a side they never thought existed. They had underestimated her, and now they would regret it. Away from the noise of school and the stares of her peers, the quiet girl found peace in the rhythm of motion. Every evening, after the sun dipped below the horizon, she would slip out of her house, hidden in the shadows, and make her way to the community center. There, no one knew her as the quiet girl or the target of ridicule. In that space, she was just another martial artist, working to perfect her craft, away from prying eyes. Her training wasn't something she shared with anyone. It was a secret she kept locked away, hidden beneath the calm exterior she wore every day. Every punch, every kick, every stance was practiced in silence. Her only audience, the mirror, her only judge, herself. She feared what might happen if the world discovered her skill. She feared the attention it would bring, the expectations. In her mind, being quiet, being invisible, was safer. It meant no one would ever know what she was truly capable of. But the truth was, she had always been drawn to martial arts. It started when she was young, just a kid looking for a way to deal with the chaos in her life. At first, it was an escape from the harsh realities of growing up, an outlet for the anger she didn't know how to express. It was in those early days that she began to understand the power of control, not just over others, but over herself. She wasn't looking for glory or fame. She wasn't the type to show off or boast about her abilities. Martial arts was her refuge, a way to cope with the pressures she couldn't talk about. Her classmates knew her as the quiet one, the girl who never spoke up, who never drew attention. But what they didn't know was that each day after school, she became someone else entirely, someone strong, someone capable. She didn't talk about it because she didn't want to be judged. She didn't want to be the girl who could throw a punch or defend herself. She didn't want to be a target, even if that meant staying hidden in the shadows of her own potential. But now, as the echoes of the bully's mocking words reverberated in her mind, she realized that maybe it was time for the world to see who she really was. In the quiet moments, when she was alone, her mind wandered back to the first day she stepped into the dojo, the first time she faced the mat with nothing but raw determination. She had been nervous, unsure of herself, but the sense of discipline and focus that martial arts gave her was the one thing that had helped her through the toughest parts of her life. She remembered her first teacher's words. Strength comes not from what you do to others, but from how you control yourself. It clicked. Her ability to hold her peace, to stay calm in the face of adversity, wasn't a weakness. It was her strength. And now she realized it was time to stop hiding it. The push from the bullies had awakened something deep inside her, something she couldn't ignore anymore. What they didn't know was that her strength wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional. It was everything she had built in those late-night training sessions, in the quiet moments of reflection, when she fought not just to prove herself to the world, but to prove to herself that she could be more than they ever expected. And now, the world was about to find out. It started like every other day, with the familiar chatter of the school hallway. The bullies spotted her across the room, and without missing a beat, they saw an opportunity. This time, they weren't just going to mock her, they were going to humiliate her in front of everyone. "Hey, quiet girl," one of them called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "We've got a challenge for you today." The others laughed, their eyes gleaming with malicious anticipation. They didn't even care that the whole cafeteria was watching. To them, it was just another opportunity to assert their power. This time, they had planned something different. Instead of just words, they would physically push her, try to get under her skin in front of the entire school. They weren't just looking for a laugh. They wanted to break her. One of the bullies, the leader of the group, approached her with an arrogant grin. He shoved her hard in the chest, knocking her back a few steps. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little push?" His friends cheered him on. Her heart raced. The blood in her veins seemed to slow as she felt the weight of the situation. For a moment, she wondered if she could just walk away, go back to hiding, back to being invisible. It would be so much easier. But something inside her snapped. The memory of all those nights in the dojo, the countless hours of training, the discipline and power she learned, that was her truth. She had spent so much time hiding from it, so much time running from it. But now it was clear. She wasn't weak. She wasn't just a quiet girl who could be pushed around. She wasn't going to let them do this anymore. In one smooth motion, she stepped forward, faster than anyone could react. She grabbed the leader's wrist with a vice-like grip, twisting it with a precision that sent a shock of pain up his arm. His grin faltered, and before he could even process what had happened, she used his momentum to throw him to the ground in a controlled, fluid move. The entire cafeteria fell silent. The laughter stopped. The bullies froze, their faces drained of color. She wasn't done. She stood tall, her chest heaving, her breath steady. With one swift movement, she took a defensive stance, her eyes never leaving the group of bullies. The leader groaned, trying to get up, but before he could, she locked his arm in a submission hold, making him tap out. The smug, cocky face he had worn just moments before was now replaced with disbelief. The silence in the room was deafening. The girl stood there, calm and controlled, while the bullies, once the loudest voices in the school, were now the ones cowering. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one by one, the students began to whisper, some in awe, some in disbelief. No one had ever seen her like this. They never even knew she was capable of something like this. The bullies, humiliated and speechless, quickly scrambled to their feet, trying to recover their composure. But it was too late. The damage was done. They had underestimated her, and now they regretted it. The girl stood tall, her eyes cold, her body poised. She had just done something she never thought she'd do. She had taken control of the situation, and in that moment, she realized something that would change her life forever. She wasn't just the quiet girl anymore. She was someone to be reckoned with. The bullies, once the ones in power, were now the ones who had to look over their shoulders, knowing they had crossed a line they would never be able to uncross. And as for the girl, she walked away, her head held high, leaving them in the dust of their regret. She was no longer afraid. The first few days after the confrontation felt like a strange kind of silence. The school had been buzzing with rumors, whispers, and sideways glances. Word spread fast, and the quiet girl, was now the talk of the town. She couldn't walk down the hall without hearing her name murmured, people staring at her as she passed. Some of the looks were filled with awe, others with fear. The bullying had stopped. No one dared to mock her again. But the quiet girl soon realized that in their place came new challenges. Some students, those who had once looked past her, now saw her as someone to admire. They approached her in the halls, asking about her skills, giving her nervous smiles. She was suddenly seen as something powerful. Some even tried to befriend her, offering invitations to hang out, to chat, to be part of their circle. They were intrigued by the mystery of her. They saw the martial arts champion, the girl who had taken down the leader of the bullies with ease, and they wanted to know her. But it wasn't all admiration. There were others who looked at her with a mix of fear and uncertainty. Her once quiet, reserved nature was now something they didn't fully understand. They saw her as unpredictable, dangerous. They saw someone who could hurt them if they crossed the line. In the lunchroom, students moved aside as she walked by. It was as if she had become a creature of a different world, one that didn't fit the mold of the shy girl they once knew. And it wasn't just the students. Even the teachers were more cautious around her. There was a subtle shift in the way they spoke to her, the way they looked at her. It was as if they were all waiting for her to explode again. But none of it was what she had wanted. She never asked for this attention. She didn't want to be feared or idolized. She just wanted to be herself. The days were filled with this new tension, a constant struggle between the old version of herself and the new one that everyone else saw. She couldn't escape the looks, the whispers, but at the same time she realized that the way people saw her wasn't something she could control, and that realization brought its own set of challenges. She wasn't just quiet anymore. She wasn't just the girl who blended into the background. Now she was the one who could break a bully's wrist with a single twist. She could flip someone on the ground before they even knew what hit them. She had strength, and the world was starting to see it. But she hadn't wanted that. She didn't want to be a show-off, someone people feared. She didn't want her strength to be her defining feature. Martial arts had always been her escape, her way to deal with the world, not a way to turn herself into something she wasn't. In the quiet moments when she was alone, the emotional weight of it all settled in. She wanted to hide again. She wanted to be the old version of herself, the one no one noticed, the one no one feared. But deep down, she knew that wasn't possible anymore. The girl who had stood up to the bullies had earned her place in the world. She had shown everyone that there was more to her than they had ever realized, and that wasn't something she could undo. But she could learn to embrace it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something that happened overnight. Slowly, she began to change her thinking. She realized that she didn't have to let others dictate who she was or what she was capable of. She could be strong, but she didn't have to be loud about it. She could use her power in ways that helped others, ways that reflected who she truly was. One afternoon, she walked into the gym, but this time, it wasn't to avoid attention. It wasn't to hide. She was there to help someone, a younger girl who had been bullied for being different. This time, she wasn't going to stand on the sidelines. She was going to show her strength, not to dominate, but to protect. That was the first step. She wasn't going to hide her abilities anymore. She wasn't going to be ashamed of who she was, and she certainly wasn't going to let fear control her. For the first time in a long time, she realized that her strength wasn't something to fear. It was something to own. It was her power, her voice, her way of making a difference in a world that had once seen her as weak. The shift was subtle at first. The first time she stepped into the gym after the confrontation, she did it without fear, without the anxiety that used to grip her in public spaces. It was no longer about hiding who she was or shrinking into the background. It was about standing tall and being unapologetically herself. It felt strange but liberating. For weeks, she had felt the weight of being outed as a martial arts champion. But now she started to feel the power in that title. No longer was she the quiet girl in the corner. She was the one who could defend herself, the one who could help others find their strength. One day, a younger student, a shy girl with glasses, was cornered in the hallway by the same group of bullies who had once tormented her. The quiet girl saw it happening from a distance, and for the first time, her heart didn't race with fear. It surged with something else, determination. Without hesitation, she walked over, her voice steady as she addressed the bullies. "That's enough," she said, her tone calm but firm. The bullies, taken aback, turned to her, their smug expressions faltering. They had never expected her to stand up again. "You've had your fun," she continued. "Now leave her alone." The leader of the bullies, still the same arrogant boy who had taunted her in the cafeteria, stepped forward. "Oh, look who's playing hero now. What, you think you can stop us?" He sneered, his voice filled with mockery. But the quiet girl didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. She wasn't angry. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just tired. Tired of the bullying. Tired of the cycle of fear. With a swift move, she grabbed his arm, twisting it the same way she had done to him weeks ago. This time, there was no need for theatrics. There was no need to show off. She held him in place with quiet confidence, and for the first time, he was the one who looked vulnerable. The other bullies backed off, one by one, as they realized they couldn't take her on anymore. They'd learned their lesson the hard way. The girl who had once been an easy target was now someone they feared, someone they knew had the power to stand up for what was right. When it was over, the younger girl, still wide-eyed with shock, muttered a quiet, "Thank you." The quiet girl gave her a reassuring smile, patting her gently on the shoulder. "No need to thank me," she said softly. "You've got it in you too. You just have to believe it." Walking away from the scene, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had done what needed to be done. She had stood up for someone who couldn't defend herself. And in doing so, she had become the person she had always wanted to be. Someone who used her strength to protect, not to intimidate. Meanwhile, the bullies, especially the leader, couldn't shake the regret. Everywhere they went, they were reminded of what had happened. The boy who had once made fun of her couldn't look her in the eye anymore. He had tried to apologize, but it was too little, too late. The damage had already been done. She saw him in the hallway one day, his expression more subdued than she had ever seen it. He muttered a half-hearted apology, but the girl didn't respond. She didn't need to. The only thing that mattered was that she had moved on. She had let go of the anger, the frustration, and the bitterness that had once filled her heart. She wasn't interested in revenge anymore. She had realized that her peace, her strength, didn't come from holding grudges. It came from knowing who she was and how far she had come. And with that realization came a deep sense of emotional payoff. Not for the bullies, but for herself. She had proven something to herself, not to anyone else. She had faced down her fears and come out stronger on the other side. No longer was she the girl who cowered in the corner, the girl who was afraid of what others thought. She was the girl who stood up for what was right, who embraced her power, and who knew that her true strength came from within. As she walked through the halls, a sense of pride bloomed inside her. She wasn't the same person she had been. She wasn't just quiet anymore. She wasn't just hiding. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she was finally comfortable with that. The quiet girl stood by the window, looking out at the world that had once made her feel so small. The bullying had pushed her, forced her to reveal a strength she never knew she had. It wasn't just about fighting back. It was about finding her voice. She had learned that her strength wasn't something to hide. It was a part of who she was, and it was meant to help others, not to intimidate. The quiet girl had realized that her true power came from being herself, not from fitting into the mold others expected her to fill. Her journey had been about more than physical strength. It was about embracing her true self and standing up for those who needed it most. She understood now that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet confidence that allows you to help others find their own strength. The quiet girl had learned a valuable lesson. True strength wasn't just about physical ability. It was about emotional intelligence, knowing when to stand up and when to walk away. She had learned how to balance her power with humility, using it to make a difference, not to dominate. Her transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She wasn't the same girl who had once feared being seen. She was someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to show it. As she stood tall, a sense of empowerment washed over her. She wasn't just fighting back for herself, she was fighting for others, showing them that they too had the strength to stand up for what's right. If you've ever faced a challenge where others underestimated you, share your story in the comments. And if you believe in standing up for yourself, hit that like button.